Welcome to Agency Ascend, the podcast dedicated to helping independent insurance agents grow, adapt, and thrive in today's evolving insurance marketplace. I'm Chad Brummett, our COO, and with me today I have Mr. Christopher Lacey, our managing partner.
Howdy. And
Jessica McBurney, our regional vice president.
Hello.
So, we've had an interesting run on topics recently. It's nice having you back in the studio with us, Chris.
Glad to be back.
Yeah. And
a little sunburned, but I'm here.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't look other than the red nose.
Yeah, thanks. Going as Rudolph.
Yeah. But today we actually, and this is actually something that's kind of come up from Jessica while she's been out there talking with people. It's really kind of what's going on with markets, market access, carrier relationships. Is all access good access? Are markets opening up?
Golden question.
Yeah, stuff like that. So, that's really where we're going. And I think probably one of the first thoughts that comes to mind is we hear people asking a lot, are the markets starting to open up? Are carriers giving out appointments?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it still just, just tight?
Yeah.
So kind of what are you seeing out there right now, Jessica, from your perspective, as far as new appointments, new carriers, just kind of like the state of the market in general?
I definitely think that in 2026, we're talking about growth goals, so that's pretty different from the past couple of years where we've not been talking about inherent growth goals the same way or just retention. I do think it's interesting that, our last session, we talked a lot about the different types of groups, right, or networks and affiliations that independent agencies can have. And this topic really goes hand in hand with that and talking about what kind of markets are out there, what kind of access is out there, and what do those relationships look like. I do think that going into 2026 and beyond, with the tight market that we are coming out of, carriers are going to continue to be very intentional about who they want to do business with. So even if there's growth goals, even if the markets are somewhat opening, it doesn't mean they're looking for a massive amount of new distribution points. I think if anything, there's more need in this industry to prove that you're the right distribution point. If you're going to be a direct contract, get a direct contract.
I would add to that and say there are 38,000+ agencies out there, and not all of them are going to have the same access. I don't mean they're not going to have the same access to the products. What I mean is that they're not going to have the same relationships with the carrier partners that are offering their products to the marketplace. We see this constantly with even competing networks or clusters or different whether you're starting your own agency, you go to somewhere and it's only as good as the relationships they hold in that territory. And in some cases, it could be the difference between national, regional, or local. And so you really have to be careful who you're aligning yourself with. And I will say different today than, let's say, 10, 15 years, well, really even longer than that. You almost had to bully your way in to a certain extent, and that was being tough.
Yeah, what does that look like? Bullying your way into a market.
Bullying your way, in my definition, so this is Christopher Lacey hot take, I guess, would be, okay, I have a significant amount of premium, and you're going to do business with me. Okay. And I'm going to tell you how to operate, what to do. And that, I think, was very indicative of how a lot of the, let's say, $250 million shops and larger really played that game. Well, that is completely different today. You have with AI, you have with technology, you have with data and everything else, where the carriers do have a lot more say and control. And so they're wanting to work with fewer and fewer agencies and expect more and more production from them. So you can't get around, like I can't go to my carrier partners and go, oh, this is BS and just go off. I have to be more selective. I have to bring data forward. I have to say, hey, look, this is in our best interest. You're a for-profit. We're a for-profit. Here's what we need to do to be able to bring this product forward. And it would be helpful if we can navigate this way. That's what we're seeing more of the communication now and how people are working with the carrier relations.
No, that makes total sense, right? And obviously the relationship helps you get in and get that access. What does that relationship do once you're in.
When you have the relationship, I mean, I was actually also with a panel recently with one of our carrier partners, and they focused on this topic of relationships and what does it mean and all that type of deal. When there's a relationship between the carrier rep and the agency, you can get a lot more done, and especially if that rep is actually providing you tangible data and something that's beyond just an email. Here's your rates, here's your product. No, it's more of like, hey, FYI, I noticed that this particular product line is doing really well in these zip codes. And oh, by the way, your agent down the street was able to market this way, and it's very creative, and we think this would align itself with you. They will also be the ones to even identify potential books for acquisition. So with a strong relationship, they will share a lot more information because they honestly want to see you be successful. They have a fiduciary responsibility. You have a fiduciary responsibility to benefit one another. So a good rep and a good relationship, it makes all the difference. Even in, like we talk about the hard market. I remember one of our carrier partners going like, hey, our home and audit product right now sucks, but we're writing a ton of renters, and all we're saying is go after that. We understand the tangibility or the retention for that is relatively low, or they'll just help you bob and weave when the market changes.
Getting that insight.
So now, when you're talking to people coming into the industry, Jessica, how much weight, and obviously having the relationship helps with most markets, right? But are there certain markets where even relationship aside, it's just tough
To get into? Oh, yeah. I mean,
some more so than others? Like
absolutely. I mean, we talk about this, right, as an ecosystem on who are some of the top carrier new strategic partners that we're looking at, and then also do they mesh with who we are, how we operate, our value proposition, and do we mesh with them too, right? Like there's every carrier is subject to the lens that they want to put on for how they want to operate with their distribution channel, and some do that through a very wide market approach where they're going to appoint pretty openly, and they're looking at it as, hey, we want to penetrate the market by just size and scope, right? Kind of like what we see Foremost doing right now on their new product, where they're saying, hey, we want to be the next $1 billion partner. We want to be in the top 4. We're going to do that by going very wide and broad stroke. Whereas you see other carriers that are saying, no, you have to have X amount with this carrier, X amount with that carrier, then we'll look at your book, and then we need to see flow, and then we need to understand that you're going to make us first priority. And it's much more boutique, where they're saying, hey, we're only going to get this many appointments in this mile radius, and we're doing a scarcity model versus a volume. So I think it's understanding as an agency, what do you need to be successful? And I think that that's one of the really important conversations that we can have as a partner is once you get past the understanding of, is this direct access? Is this a direct appointment? Am I going to access this through an MGA? What does that look like? And get to what are the core relationships that are going to make my business tick, that are going to foundationally help us move forward. And there's, I think, that kind of like C group you start with that you can get, and then you kind of move to your B level, and then hopefully you evolve enough as an agency to get to those A carriers that you really can't get at year 1 to 3.
Well, and even in that, obviously like your ranking of A, B, and C, they will change too as the life cycle of your agency also changes.
Yeah.
So what started us off as a C agent or carrier may turn into an A carrier because they're expanding their knowledge set into that territory, into that area, into that niche, and they become a lively partner. And in a lot of those cases, what we see is the carrier more or less brings you to the dance, meaning that you got rooted with the agency early on in their gestation. And so there's a strong loyalty there. And again, that buds up phenomenal relationships and allows it to blossom.
Well, and conversely, though, as the carriers, as they evolve in their business, you can have an A carrier that all of a sudden one day finds themselves in a B position.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're seeing more and more too, even in our market, where excess and surplus lines, non-admitted markets are becoming such a large part of even these very standard agencies, these agencies that attack standard business, right? And so being able to navigate that conversation, but also, who are the agents that are going into the financial ratings behind a company? Are you working, what type of carrier is this? Are you educating your client on it? Because it's not always just that big brand. There's so much it's price driven as things have gone up that becomes a super important conversation as well.
Or we look at weather pattern changes. I mean, we've had just
Global
huge
warming.
Well, global warming. We've had huge catastrophic events here, even in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And so a lot of the carriers has sit there and go, okay, how do we account for this? How do we rate for this? And so they're pushing more in business away, which we're seeing that influx going to the E&S side because it's now become hairier to write.
And that was actually going to be my next question was how much of that contraction in appointments and just number of agents, we had some carriers that were actually, taking appointments away. How much of that was strictly tied to those cat losses?
Well, I mean, they are a for-profit company. So I'm going to be a lot more willing to give out appointments if everything's, heart, stars, and horseshoes. So
Heart,
stars, and horseshoes, clovers, and balloons. No, it's the Lucky Charms.
Okay.
But whenever,
wow, I thought that was a criticism. That's funny.
I mean, I'm going to adopt it, but no. Basically, if everything's profitable and so he's looking up. Yes, it's their commercial. I memorized that from when I was a child.
Isaac. Is it the green though, or the red, or?
It is the green one. So yeah, when everything's good, profitable, I'm going to appoint more agents to write that profitable risk. If I get my hands slapped by a major hailstorm, because that's what we're prone to here, or tornado, I'm going to be a little bit more reluctant. And then how much were my reserves reinsured and what were my limits there? So there's nuances beyond, hey, you have a product I want to be able to sell. And then I didn't even introduce the concept of spider webbing, which is where a carrier will input a mesh network to protect some of its old school relationships to say, hey, I'm not going to appoint another agency to write that same product in a 50-mile radius of you.
Do you see that often? Like what?
I think I'm seeing it less and less because that model is relatively flawed in that if you're the only one who had that appointment, you have that exclusivity, but then the carrier doesn't have the flexibility to expand beyond that.
Right. I mean, they're capped at whatever that person can write.
Yeah.
So that brings up a great point. Say I was appointed 10 years ago, and I'm now versus a new agent that's being appointed today. What does that look like? I mean, what do those requirements look like? Are they different requirements? Yeah. I mean that the world would be completely different.
Yes, they are. I mean, we're in a different market. There's different expectations. A legacy agency, to your point, Chris, it's going to be looked at differently overall. Yep. So they may have come in on a certain premium commitment. As we know, premium's gone up. So those commitments are going to go up with that. Maybe a different count as far as, policies that they need to have per year as far as new business, even retention. I mean, all of those things could be subject to change over time. And I think that as we enter into a more difficult market and we talk about carriers not wanting as many distribution points, right? Because if they can have 100 great distribution points that are producing what they need and it's profitable business, why would they want more to manage? Mm-hmm. Why would they want to spread that? Why do they want the cost associated? And so I think that obviously their requirements are also going to increase with that thought process, where I think 15 years ago was a very different market. It was looked at very differently. Yep. And, it was like, just bring on more. And that's a conversation I feel like I have a lot with, especially newer agencies.
Actually, I think 15 years ago we had another smaller hard market. We actually saw carriers exit.
Well, mold in
what?
In all fairness, Jessica was still in school.
So. I don't know what version of school we're talking about. All that to say, yes, there have always, there's cycles, right? But there was a different market there's been a different time period for an agency that's been 15 years in business and different relationships that have built. But a lot of newer agencies, I think that sometimes they come in with this rosy glassed lens, Lucky Charm perspective that, you know, carriers just want more. They want more volume. And the truth is that I don't think that they just want more. They want very specific types of business, and they expect that you're going to understand and learn what that is and deliver.
Yeah. And it can be broken down differently per carrier. Realistically. I mean, there are several examples of top carriers that are even some of the top for us that used to just say, here you go, appoint anybody you want. Well, they've gotten a little bit more sophisticated to where they're saying, hey, we don't want everybody because there's costs associated with maintaining open codes. Meanwhile, there are still other carriers that say, no, we want everything because we need to be able to grow this. So being aligned with a partner that understands where that carrier is in that life cycle, specifically to the marketplace that you're in, as well as nationally, because it can change nationally as well. That can permeate the local and vice versa. It's a lot.
So with the relationships and the fact that let's take a travelers, you know, just been around
since 19. What is it? They came out. I remember their I got to tour their facility, but essentially they would insure, I think for a penny, you walking from one location to the next. That's how they got started for traveling. It was called travel insurance. It's pretty. I mean, it's
Fun
amazing.
fact.
Yeah.
Or the Hartford, right? Since early 1900s.
Yeah.
So you have these well-established carriers in the marketplace, and we have some territory and regional managers, directors that have been around, and they're now starting to retire.
Yeah.
So with this newer wave of leadership coming in, coupled with AI,
Yeah.
do you think that the relational aspect will remain just as important for the next 5 years as it's been for the past 15?
It's a good question.
I would value that, yes. The relationship is equally as important. Now, how that relationship is leveraged or utilized will differ. Carrier reps, let's just say of old, really ran kind of like their own little kingdom. They had the complete yay or nay say when it came to appointments or anything, how that territory was run. Nowadays, with AI, with the technology, with the data that's being thrown in there, it's not it. They still have some of that control. They can volley for it, but the business is going to make a business decision that is going to rely not solely on that territory rep's relationship, but also the data supporting those findings.
Yeah.
So I still think. I mean, I was reading this book, and it's going to be one of my recommendations at the end, but essentially, you want to be able to, in good negotiations, to focus solely on the problem, not the person.
Absolutely.
And so when you're targeting the problem and how do we navigate through this, that's one way I would recommend to agents working with carriers and vice versa. Is really, okay, here's the problem that we have. How do we work this in versus saying, well, I don't like how they're talking to me, or I don't like that email that they sent is very erratic. And it's like, hey, focus on the questions, find out what the problem is. Let's gear towards that, because I'm going to be able to get a lot more done in that context.
Absolutely. So if we have that shift, and while relationships, and personally, I agree with you, relationships are still going to be critical. It's what it looks like, how they are mutually used and mutually beneficial changes, because we do have so much more data that we didn't have yesteryear, right? So does that mean market diversification within an agency is now more critical than ever, right? Because with the one thing that we've seen is rate of change continues to get faster and faster and faster.
I mean,
great point.
Yeah, if you look at it from the customer standpoint, the more business that I entrust an agent with, the stickier of a client I become. And if I can only offer one slice to that, it's going to be harder and harder for me as an agency owner to compete with any other agency for that matter.
That's the offensive approach, right? Make sure I have the most to offer my customers. From a defensive side, it also makes sure that if for some reason there's a change within a carrier that doesn't align with my agency, I've got the ability to then pivot that customer base somewhere else.
That's exactly where I was going to go with it because, I think as technology ramps up and agents look for more and more access and more ways to provide for clients, we're going to continue to see access ramp up. So whether that's them having more relationships, MGA relationships, opportunities to get access to those, they're going to need it to a degree because the days of having only a couple are kind of far behind us. And you even see captives, right? Like we've seen some really big moves from large captive carriers that are
Craft
moving.
Lake, I mean, that's a
brokerage, right? It's a brokerage
that was developed
solution.
for farmers.
And so you see them making big investments in that space and in the IA channel, right? Because if they're recognizing they have to diversify outside of their core product that has driven them over the past 100 years in business, that's really good evidentiary support of what changes they see happening in the market. And so I think even on an individual agency perspective, they have to think about, to your point, if a carrier moves out and like Dallas-Fort Worth or just Texas in general, we may be coming out of a hard market for the industry as a whole, but we're always going to be a difficult territory, right?
We're one hailstorm away.
Yeah, that's it. We're one large catastrophe away from seeing carriers falter. And we've seen it in the past, to your point, Chris, right? Where you see these carriers make these major moves where they pull out of major markets or turn off things. And I think for the next generation of the agency to survive, they really have to think about how they leverage technology and relationships the right way to make sure that their agency can adapt. So I guess it comes up with another question, which is how do they do that?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the stop gaps that they can be putting in place in 2026 to help with that?
Is that a question?
Yeah, it is. What are your guys' thoughts on it? Because that's what's going through my mind right now, and I'd love to hear your perspective.
Typically, things that end in a question mark are a question.
Yeah.
I can draw a question mark for you. That helps too.
I may have zoned out. No, so
It's fair. That was a long statement.
So what are some of the technologies that they can be doing or relationships that they can garner in this state to basically be competitive in 2026?
How are they diversifying and how do they protect their position?
Yeah,
right?
Small individual agency owner. I'm competing with companies that now have tons of market access, tons of technology. What do I do to ensure I don't go obsolete?
Well, I would first start with researching technology in a general sense, because if you're fearful of it, the best way to get past that is to work with it.
Educate
yourself in it.
Knowledge is power.
Whether it's utilizing, we see people use ChatGPT, Copilot, which is the Microsoft version, which from what I understand is data protected. But you do your research on that. It essentially playing around with it, just try it. I mean, we were in a mastermind. This is when it was in the early stages. And it was just like, hey, what are KPIs that I should be looking at for insert business here? And just have it produce things. And it was scary. It was scary accurate. But beyond that, I was able to even leverage that to say, okay, help me make my stuff more nuanced. How do I do this? And it's learning. So that was one aspect of it. I'd say the other thing is as a smaller agency, and this is specifically for, I would say, 1 to 10
million in premium?
No, 1 to 10 personnel.
Oh, okay.
So your one person shop all the way up to a 10-person organization. When you go up against a major account and you have the carrier, let's say for this example, you have the same carrier, one of the greatest strengths that you have as the owner when you're going up against a large agency is the customer is now dealing with an owner or a insert employee number here. And the way an owner is going to look at the business and their customer is going to be, in my opinion, far greater on a relationship scale, as well as they need that customer. So there's a higher leverage point for the consumer because they're like, hey, if I don't write this, I don't eat. Versus somebody stuck in a 100+ person organization, so they're going like, they're not going to be as focused on retaining that because the relationship and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It's leveraging that perceived weakness as a strength.
Yeah,
because in reality, that's exactly what it is.
You can go with that big box agency. That's fine. With me, you got the owner, and you got to ask yourself: would I rather be dealing with an owner, or would I rather be dealing with employee number 8275?
Yep,
yeah,
that's a good point.
And I'll also take a slightly contrarian point of view. I think today's day and age, with as data focused as people have become, to me, if for the smaller agency, it's actually, when was the last time you picked up the phone to call your carrier rep just for a conversation?
That's true.
When was the last time you picked up the phone to talk to that underwriter?
They like that.
Talk,
They're human beings.
Yes. Talk, or even, not for a renewal meeting or something like, but just
Not because you need something.
Yeah, but actually talked to your clients.
If you want to see your submissions go higher on the priority list, actually have a relationship with the rep and the underwriter.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It might just work.
I was talking to an agent the other day that's a good friend of mine, and he's extremely relationship driven, right? Like, just very much so. And he was like, yeah, so we started working with this specific relationship, and they've been working together for a year, and their families are going on vacation together.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, we're going on a ski trip next week, bringing the wife and kids, all of us. And it's great. We're all doing it together because we talk so much and we know so much about each other. We're like, our whole family's mesh at this point. And not that everybody needs to do it to that level, but the thing is that relationship has just fostered a greater relationship. And that's what has fed the industry and made small business go round.
Yeah.
So it's still relevant.
I mean, even you talk about Travelers, Hartford, Haggerty, Liberty Mutual, all of them. Like, I'm constantly sending messages. One of the regionals at Travelers shot me a message saying he just got married. So he was sending me photos that they.
That's
Or no,
cool.
I'm sorry. He proposed.
Oh.
So he officially proposed, and so I was like, man, dude, congratulations! Like. Sharing those things, it elevates the relationship to such a higher deal. I will say, I'll give a plug to Hartford, because my buddy over at Hartford is also a car guy, because I'm a car guy, and we'll swap stories about our restorations, what he's dealing with, what problems he runs into. So yeah, I mean, it's moved way beyond just the, hey, what product mixes do you offer? Get to know them.
But and the cool part is, when you genuinely get to know them, it goes full circle, because not only does it help you in the event you do actually have a business side, but to me, one of the best parts is they actually help you get to know faster. Because sometimes there's just not a good fit. And when you have that personal relationship, they're real quick to go, man, this ain't for us.
Yeah.
But go talk to so-and-so.
So even if you don't have technology and you don't have that, these carriers do have a lot of those resources. So he was running into some opportunities and some tech companies that he was seeing that may be beneficial. And so he calls me and says, hey, man, you got to check this out. So it's like you have a full team beyond just your own four walls of your office. And they'll give you recommendations. They'll introduce you to different carriers that, if they've vetted it and you trust them, chances are you're going to want that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now that's for direct access into the carriers. What if you're going through an MGA or a wholesaler?
Which one? Some suck. No.
Anybody other than us.
Okay. No. I meant like some of the brokers.
Yeah. Well, exactly, right? Because if it's a broker relationship, then I'm not actually talking to the carrier.
Right.
I think what's interesting about the statements that you guys made is we have all of this leverageable technology in 2026, but it's almost making the relationship aspect more important, right? Because like the more technology pushes us away from having to interact with people, the more important it becomes to actually do it. Because even if you're not a totally social person, it matters at an innate primal level that we connect with each other. And even though maybe not everybody wants to always do that in business, it's really important because you like to do business with people you connect with. So even when it comes to, I think, broker and MGA relationships, it's whoever the contact is that's helping you get where you need to go, right?
Yeah.
I mean, understanding that relationship and what it provides is super important.
Well, in point to that, I mean, you've got Burns, RPS, CRC. These are massive organizations. And so you may be working with a team that isn't going to help you or isn't going to be able to do what you're asking, but you got the wrong team within that massive organization.
That's such a good point, Chris, because I mean, I'm sure you've had so many conversations about this with agents where they're like, well, I just totally wrote off writing with that company because I had this one experience or I had this one underwriter that never did what I needed to do. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, do you know how many offices just that broker has? Like I know you said you've written off this, acronym insert here, but at the end of the day, there's 15 other people you could easily get connected with. And so that's one of the things I know we have really tried to do and made a really big effort this year, especially in the broker space, is us making connections and having relationships. And then I really try to think about personalities and line of business, obviously. If you're in transportation, I don't need to connect you with the property guy. Like, you need the transportation guy. So you get thrown into a bucket, right? Especially as a new agent, and you may not get the types of contacts that you need right away. So having the right relationships with your group or network, I think that becomes super important so they can connect you with that person. And also, who's hungry? Because if you go with that guy that's got a seasoned book, then he may not be hungry for new business.
Yeah. So one final thought is, what if I don't have that relationship? What if I've got a decent agency, but it's really been tech focused?
It's never too late to start.
Just pick up the phone and call.
Or call us. That I like that one selfishly. We'd be happy to connect you.
Look for opportunities to connect. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people don't always realize there's associations and things in your area where there's always somebody in insurance somewhere.
There's so many chapters, things out there that you can get connected with. But again, just pick up the phone. You can call us or get connected.
Yeah, I would say even outside of our area, call the resources that are available to you. Whether they're industry associations,
even if they're inside reps, call them.
Call them, and they'll
Great point.
they'll at least start that dialogue.
Yep,
and that's really where we need to go. So, all right. So before we wrap up, we have our normal show and tell. Show and tell. So quotes, books, movies, something that you've read or heard recently that's moved you.
I got one. I think that's what I was saying. It kind of ties into what we were talking about. It comes from the book Getting to Yes, and it's by Roger Fisher, William Ury, and Bruce Patton. It says, be hard on the problem, soft on people. It's a very powerful idea, but it's focusing on the solving the issue rather than attacking the relationship. And I think you'll get far greater results and much further in a relationship dynamic when you do that.
That's good. Yeah, that's a really good one, Chris. I am still working through the book that I made on our last podcast suggestion, Crucial Conversations, with that's very similar to some of the ideology in there. But I chose a Winston Churchill quote this week.
Ooh la la.
Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts.
There you go.
I think that embodies the need in any type of sales environment. So that's my quote this week.
You only fail when you give up.
It's not fatal. You're not going to die from it.
No.
No,
and you can't go wrong with Churchill.
Yeah. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that on Mondays.
What, Churchill?
No, the failure isn't fatal. My little versions of failure in my head.
Awesome. And for me, it was...
you brought it. You brought an actual prop. You better show us.
You're posing.
I actually brought the prop. And this was an airport find.
You know what? There's some phenomenal those little bookstores in airports are my favorite place to stop on a layover.
So buy a ticket, go to the bookstore.
Yeah.
No.
Spend more money than you should on the book.
Just for a book.
Yeah.
But it's Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos. It's phenomenal. The way he writes follows in your mind. You're following the exact same cadence as when he speaks. But the way he writes is so straightforward, and they're complex topics broken down in a very simple way that still make you stop, underline, think. But phenomenal book. I'm not complete through it, so I'll add an update next week, but definitely highly recommend it. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And if y'all are enjoying this, like and subscribe. And until next time, onward and upward.